like a man possessed. Rassie also took it one step further this week.
And so much to talk about. It's not this rugby union show. Welcome back.
Well, it is done. Can you believe it? After all of the build-up, the hype, the talk, Eden Park still belongs to the All Blacks. The Springboks came close, and I think, Sim Tabanisa, I'm going to come straight to you. The word that sticks out in my mind after watching that is frustrating. It felt like I was watching the Springboks of 6, 7, 8 years ago, where we know we're good enough. We saw how close they came, but ultimately we'll be frustrated because they could have, and probably should have.
Yeah, look, everyone's a bit flat because it's Sunday morning and it's not just a hangover.
No.
Look, I 100% agree with you. After all of that build-up, it just didn't happen. Look, there are more than enough mitigating circumstances for why maybe we should have expected not to win. There's still this thing. There's still this weird stats of since 92, since readmission, that is, the Boks have only won in New Zealand 4 times. If you really want to look at it from another perspective, it's like the Boks have won as many World Cups in that time as they've won games in New Zealand. That just puts it into context for you. So yeah, I think maybe we should have expected it at some weird level, but you're 100% right. We actually should have expected victory.
Hey guys, if you like what you see and you want to support the show, we want you to be part of That Rugby Union Show family. Then just hit the like button, subscribe to the show, tell your friends, make sure you join us every time we're on. Slap that bell. There are new episodes every week. Don't miss it. Right, okay, we are fighting the gremlins. I'm having to use my phone this time around. Hopefully that won't disrupt us too much from the conversation that we were about to have about the big match between the Springboks and the All Blacks in Auckland. And it was not the greatest of starts. Rassie spoke about the fact that there were 15 bad minutes, and I think there were more. It was a little bit more than just the 15 bad minutes. But to kick things off, I was asking you, or at least saying to you that the overarching thought I have after watching that is frustrating. We came so close. We could have, and we probably should have.
Yeah, look, I will agree with that. That we came perilously close. But I just worry. The big issue for me, was that when the moment came, from what we've been told, the Boks kind circled this literally almost as soon as circled that fixture, almost as soon as they'd won the World Cup. And to me, it felt, when Rassie talks about that wide 15 minutes, he's talking about the first 2 tries. To me, it's we just seemed overwhelmed. We seemed overly nervous and jittery. It was the first time I'd seen this team, a team loaded yesterday with 17 World Cup winners in the match day 23, sort of not turn up mentally, particularly at the beginning. They did a great job of trying to catch things up, but it was one of those games where the Boks would do a good thing and almost immediately undermine it with a bad thing. Those penalties we kept leaking in those obstruction penalties. That was the other thing. It wasn't just penalties, it was obstruction penalties that we kept leaking every time. And it was also where we conceded them, within kicking range, within, all kind of the worst possible times as well. And the handling errors. And the lineup was a complete shambles. I know I'm going into the whole game as a whole, but the big sort of worry for me was just how the Boks didn't turn up mentally initially. Sure, they sort of made a fist of catching up in the end, but just the way they turned up, that that first try with Narawa and Vili, that was, if it wasn't such a bad result for the Boks, it would have been comical because, the other guy fell and then Vili fell over it, and then the other guy could get up and go score. He just sat there and he thought, there's a bit of under 15 C's to this, but what did he do?
Two tries looked particularly soft to me. I mean, the second one with Will Jordan was, he did very well, I thought. Came in, chose a very nice angle, but there were some tackles that were slipped there as well. And, in the cold light of day, you look back at even that good try and you think, it still should have been stopped. It still shouldn't have happened. And I was incredibly frustrated. You speak about the fact that there were those weird penalties that we gave away, silly penalties, soft tries. I think how many times were we penalized for a player crossing? I think it was 3 times, which was a little bit
I think in the match,
weird.
I think in the match itself, we considered about 10 penalties, but from those 10 penalties, probably about half were for crossing or obstructing the runner, which actually at some weird level I thought some of it was slightly unfair in the Boks, because I felt they call they call the guys who kind of like run with the attacking with the guy trying to contest the kick, the attacking kick, the opposition side, they call them the escorts. They were more bodyguard yesterday than escorts, as in they were impeding the guy properly. They did a fair bit of that, but for some reason, we got done for it. I think they only got done for it once, but we sort of consistently kept getting done for it. So it, like you say, it was stupid penalties, including that yellow card. Like you'd expect Gacha to know by now. Also, you're playing under advantage. Why would you take any chance other than just stay in the line and see where that takes you? Do you know what I mean? And, and then they score immediately after that. I think it was like a minute or two after he was sin binned. You just sat there and you're like, these guys are well versed in winning things. They won 2 rugby championships, a series against the British and Irish Lions, 2 World Cups, and suddenly, they were a little bereft of answers. And I guess that's what we really have to talk about, later in this show, which is, where are we going, with this team, if they're now putting up performances like this, it's a question that has to be asked, but yeah, that's probably for a bit later.
Yeah, given that we've got a brand new meme, and that's going to be Rassie absolutely throwing his toys, because that happened towards the back end of the match, where I thought the momentum was with the Springboks. If we kept on playing, we should have won it. We should have at least gotten the draw. That scrum that preceded it was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I haven't seen the Springboks take out an All Black scrum and dominate it like they did just before that. We scored a fantastic, try, and then immediately from the kickoff, was it Jesse Cross with Lurt or Lurt?
No, it was in front of. It was Lord on. I think it was Lord in front of Kwacha. Actually, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It was one of those.
And that was immediately after scoring points. So you kind of felt like we just were never able to capitalize on the good things that we did do. There was that incredible kick by Henry Pollard, getting the 50-22. And then time wasting in the line-out throw, penalty goes against the Springboks, and you thought, jeepers, that was the opportunity to score a try before the end of the first half. So it just seems to me like, this is going to sound strange, I saw the Springboks do better at things than I've seen them so far this international season, but maybe that's because they were playing the All Blacks, but also there are still some niggles that I'm really worried about. We can't turn away from the lineouts. They haven't been right all season long. And again, we struggled. At the breakdown, we struggled. And look, the All Blacks are great, flooding every single breakdown and winning a couple of turnovers, but they were really good at it. and we didn't seem to be able to negate it or at least readjust to what they were doing, with the ball on the ground. So on the one hand, I saw some things that we did that I thought, okay, we can. We've got this belief was creeping in. We did stifle them towards the end of the first half. But then those niggles, the handling errors, jeepers. I even saw Cheston Colby drop a ball. I don't know when last that happened.
Look, we got to be fair to Cheslin. I mean, geez, he can't be 100 out of 100 every single game. I didn't think he had a particularly bad game, but yeah, he did. He was one of the culprits for dropping the ball. But like yesterday, I don't know, dropping the ball wasn't such a bad thing with that scrum. I don't think the All Blacks fancied it. So look, I mean, the scrum was obviously very good because actually when you look at it, both the tries came from the scrum, because the first one came from that tight head after Vilko had just come on, and like I've never seen an international scrum, let alone the All Blacks of all international scrums, backpedal that quickly. And, they were shoved completely off their own ball, and it almost literally like landed at Andre Pollard's feet on the other end, having been their own put in. So, and then obviously Malcolm Marx scored that try. And then obviously I think when Cobus Reiner scored, we were on penalty advantage from another scrum. So the scrum was obviously, responsible for our two tries. But that was practically the only area that worked. The lineout is again an issue, and the problem is it's been such an important area. When people talk about the Springboks, they talk about the maul, because essentially what what a lot of people don't get is that if you're suddenly uncertain about whether you guaranteed your own ball at your own lineout, if you're not sure, then what that means is smaller other things, like other add-ons, like your rolling maul suddenly aren't so guaranteed. And not only are they not guaranteed, they're kind of like, because of the uncertainty, it gives the opposition a chance to actually properly contest. And they contested our maul quite well, sometimes illegally. I thought as much as Tupaea did well in contesting the maul, I think the one thing they kept swimming around at times, and they were being allowed to swim around to contest it. And it's quite weird. I feel like it's a picture that began from one of our infield mauls when we tried that under 15C move from Paul Roos again, where you throw the ball up in there in the middle of the field and you try to form a maul. So the All Blacks actually gave the rest of the free world a blueprint on how to defend that, and that you can just go immediately around and basically turn it into a maul and make sure that the ball doesn't come out. And that's how you deal with it, because it's not a line out. You are allowed to go around this time around, instead of, if it was a line out, you wouldn't be able to do that. I think it was Scott Barrett and Tupaea that went and did that. So now I'm not sure if that move is ever going to come out again, because if it does come out again, guess what? The rest of the world is just going to go, okay, cool. We know what to do now. We know how to contest it. So surprised that it had gone. I think the picture that the ref got from that was kind of like a lasting picture, because he kept doing that with the mauls. But like the problem with the lineout is, obviously yesterday the big person to blame was Malcolm Marx. Whenever a maul goes wrong, the poor hooker always gets it. But there are a lot of things that go wrong. Obviously, you ask, is it the throwing? Is it the timing? Is it the lifting? Is it, is the caller calling at the right places to, because you're not throwing to yourself, you're throwing to yourself again, under pressure from the opposition. So you put all of those things together, and, balls go to ground or go to the opposition, or, don't get thrown, which was a bizarre thing to watch. So yeah, I think the lineout is the biggest of our issues, and simply because it's been such a huge area from where the Boks have scored their points, either through rolling maul tries or cheap penalties, so that they can either carry on or just pop it over the try line, Oh, sorry, you pop it over the post. So essentially, that's an area that needs urgent attention, because once that goes, it's such a strong area that the Boks, that the Boks have had in the past, that they can no longer rely on. The rucks, obviously, that's an issue as well. We basically got counter-rucked, silly yesterday, and that's and again, it means obviously our cleaners are not getting there on time, and they're giving them an opportunity to have a stab at the ball, or you've got the wrong guys coming in to clean, like maybe little backs against forwards, and then we just getting shoved almost completely off our ball, or having to infringe to try and get the ball still out on our outside. I thought they went off their feet a couple of times too there, but again, they were so, sometimes the team that's dominant in those aspects gets rewarded for dominance, even though maybe not always accuracy. So for me, those are the two massive areas. Yes, we got done in the kicking game, but I'm a firm believer in that kicking game. Sometimes you win it, sometimes you don't win it. It's, you don't always win it. It doesn't matter who you are. Like we talk about the All Blacks. One of the big areas in which they lost against Argentina was the kicking game. But the caveat to what I'm saying is, I might say sometimes you win it, sometimes you lose it. One thing you're almost guaranteed to do, though, if you do lose it, is to lose the game as well. So you don't want to lose the kicking game.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think, it is a 50-50. You're kicking for contestables. It's not something that we necessarily have gone into test matches doing like we did at the last World Cup, or at least as often. So not too surprised that the kicking game, or at least the outcome there. And in fact, on that, because maybe this pushes me more towards talking about the player personnel, I see a couple of people on the comments having a go at Vili, all in the game, saying, oh man, Vili was all out at sea for the Narawa try, which he was. Hona Wikipa saying Vili's defense has always been suspect. And I think that's the thing with Vili is, sure, he can create spectacularly, and when he doesn't do the good things spectacularly, that's also spectacular. So, but on the kicking game, I think that what got me thinking was, it was really good to see Caden Moody. I thought he had a really good match all throughout. I think the jury is now going to be well out on Vili, and whether or not Rassie needs to really look towards the future. You've got guys like Sasha who could play there. You've got Damien, obviously he wasn't in good nick, but sometimes, you just need that one game to click. You've got Apelele Fasi. It's not like there aren't any options in the back line. Is that the last we see of Vili?
Oh, it's a tough one to say. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was. Simply because I felt with Vili this year that, having not got to his 100 caps, and, the Bok coaches obviously desperately wanting to get him there, I thought that almost like the moment he got his 100th cap, he would suddenly playing more of a squad role instead of, a playing role. I think what has since happened, and it's one of the things we need to recognize about the Boks this year. The Boks have had a million sort of plans in terms of what they would like to try this year. And all those plans have come to naught simply because I think they just haven't been themselves. And I think particularly with this competition, the moment they lost that game at Ellis Park, so much of what they were trying to do has had to be changed. And, like Vili supposedly coming in for the Cape Town game against the Wallabies, and obviously ending up not playing anyway because he got a groin injury before that game, was one of those things. I think that's what's happened with Vili. I think the original plan was probably to give him his 100th and then just have him sort of around the squad, helping with his expertise, especially, back three expertise. But, I don't think he was meant to be pressed into service. But now that he has and hasn't played particularly well, we probably just going to have to look at the fact that we do have two guys. The incumbent last year was Fassi with Damian Willemse injured. Even with Vili fit last year, Fassi was the incumbent. So you've got a choice now. Do you go with Fassi, even though he's not at his absolute best, although he's shown decent touches in patches when he has played. He just hasn't been able to string together good games, good 80 minutes or whatever you want to call it. And then obviously Damien Willemse, you know what you have in him. That guy is gifted. He just hasn't played in a very long time. And because he hasn't played, he's a bit rusty. And, then the question you've got to ask is, how's he going to get that rhythm back, and which in turn will mean form. So we've got those players, and yes, like you say, you could go with Sasha simply because of his boot and the fact that he is an out and out footballer. He's a baller. He's one of those guys that could play probably anywhere in the back line, not just 10, 12, and 15. So maybe actually the better plan is to go with Sasha simply because of the three guys, pretenders to Villy's throne, he's probably the one in the most sort of decent nick. And then, maybe that probably means, someone like Miney at 10, with Sasha to do your kicking at poles. But the problem is always, we always want to put all our best players on the field at the same time. And then you need to finish still. And, suddenly all those players, you say, oh, we don't quite trust what's going on with them. Suddenly you got to put them on the bench and they've got to come and make an impact. So maybe that's why those guys start. And then, a guy like Sasha comes off the bench. So, decisions to be made, obviously. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if Villy doesn't play again. But yeah, look, he's had a couple of how many bad games has he had? Yeah,
Actually, thinking the scheme of things, he's had a lot of bad games.
Yeah, I don't think he was great against Italy either in his 100th. So, look, I can understand the argument both ways. Look, he's 36 now. He's got 100 caps. He's got 2 World Cup winners' medals. He's got all these things that I was counting in terms of what the Boks have won. I don't think he would complain if they said, listen, you know what? Thanks for your service. We're just going to go in another direction now, because we actually need to go in another direction.
Yeah, I want to move on to the forwards, but all in the game, you're keeping me here. We're among the backs with that question. Can Sasha and Damien play in the same Bok team together? Which I think it's a good question. My immediate answer is yes. Because I think Damien is really, really good, especially when he's at the back. You could even swap them around for good measure. But I think Sasha at 10 and Damien at 15 definitely works for me. And it alludes to what you were talking about just now, Sim, when you spoke about that combination of Villy, or the combination of the 2 10s, call it, or playmakers. I find that maybe Rassie, and it's hard to get into Rassie's brain, does want to have a Villy, someone who can open up the opposition defense a little bit better than maybe a Pollard, whose first instinct is to put his head down and have a run, maybe have a step or whatever it is, if you're not going to have a Mani on the field. So the combo, Sasha, Damien, I say yes. What do you say?
No, listen, all in the game must stop with these Frank Lampard, Paul Scholes, and Stevie G nonsense here, like
Can
they play in the same midfield? We've seen this with England. I think good players should be able to play together. I'm probably gonna get a lot of flack for having said that. Yeah, I think they can play. All the guys need to do, all what I've seen when I've seen them at the Stormers, is that maybe the guys kind of get confused about who's doing what. Sort of like there's a lack of role clarity, and and because they're such good players, because they're such great players, they kind of like, they feel like I should be the one doing this. As long as somebody just clarifies the roles and says, look, this is what you do, and you've got to be disciplined in what you do. In sort of executing your role, I don't think there should be an issue. Damien, I know he loves the idea of being a player who can play, who can play practically any position. He loves taking on those challenges. I wonder, where he's going to end up, because I think the older he gets, and maybe he loses some of that electric pace that he's always had, and maybe even agility, he might have to make a decision. The question then becomes, is that place 12 or is that place 15? Instead of, being available to play wing this week, being available to play 13, 12, 10, whatever you want me to do. So it'll be interesting, but I generally think good players should be able to play together as long as everyone is clear about what it is that they're trying to do.
100% agree. Campo, thanks for that comment. Willemse must surely be on the bench, he says, at least. Can cover 15, 10, 12, yes. Hasn't had enough games to get himself back on top, but on song, he's one of our best. So really tying into what Simba said. And David saying, I really think that Vinny should be kept in the squad as a coach, like Dwayne Vermeulen. You can't throw that experience away. I understand what you're saying there. I think, which player I would like to see in the box setup come in on a short term, at least for now, given the issues we were discussing, is maybe a Victor Matfield, just to come and help them with the lineouts, just in terms of the tactics. I mean, that guy is a master tactician when it comes to that. But perhaps there is a role for a Villy, because we don't create a lot of Villy Leroux's. We don't create a lot of those automatically a flair guy from fullback particularly. But I don't know. It could also end up being the case of too many cooks. So we never know if Tony Brown would have him there adding his 2 cents worth while he's been working with the boys.
Look, I mean, I think first things first, I think it's a good idea to have him. I think maybe in the way I was saying it a bit earlier, which was, once he got his 100th, they would keep him in the squad, even though he was now a peripheral member of the squad, instead of a guy who's going to be expected to play week in and week out, or to be pushing to play week in and week out. I don't know about making it official and sort of turning him into a coach. Sometimes I worry about great players, being turned into coaches, that maybe we don't respect coaches, people who actually coach for a living enough, in favor of kind of like just using a player because he's had, such a great career. I imagine there are people who know how to teach what to do in the back three. And, Villy wouldn't be, literally the only person capable of that. But by the same token, I must admit, I'm not against the idea of tapping into that experience. Because like sometimes what happens is maybe that voice is much easier to listen to, simply because the guy's been there, done that. You respect him. You've maybe even played with him, that kind of stuff. So again, I'm 50-50 here. I do think you don't, like David says, you don't throw that away. But by the same token, like you say, you don't want too many cooks, or you don't want to overlook actual coaches in favor of players who may know how to play and not necessarily how to coach. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. And I also think that, we spoke about the potential future fullbacks being Damien and Apelele. I don't know how much more their game would benefit from having a Villy around. Maybe Fassi, because he's still a youngish guy. Damien has been around the block, and he is probably as much of a flair player as Villy Leroux. And they are different, just fundamentally. Damien's got a lot more pace, and he's a more physical type player. So I maybe if there was a need for a specific player to shadow somebody like a Villy, I certainly wouldn't be, David, opposed to that. I think it wouldn't be a loss for the Springboks. Quickly want to go into the forwards. I can't believe how long we've been talking already. And there were a couple of notable things there. I thought that Marco van Staden had a really good game at 6. And I fear for him because I think he's probably not going to play next week, depending on what happens with injuries and selection. But, we could see Sia reverting back to the 6 because we should have an out-and-out 8 back, come next week. We've been waiting. I've gone blank.
Hey, Jasper. Jasper Visa.
Visa, donkey. I
he's
I wanted to say,
so
I
long.
wanted
We
to
don't
say
even know who he
Quibus.
is.
Yeah,
He's been banned for so long.
I wanted to say Quibus. Yeah, so pity for Jean-Luc. He's obviously not going to play, hadn't flown home, but we could see a shift in that selection in the loose trio. I think Sia probably starts at 6 next week. Jasper comes back in, Marco van Staden drops out, and maybe that would also give a little bit of a push, which I thought Pieter-Steph du Toit hardly ever needs a push. I thought he had a good game, but I thought that we've seen a lot more from him. But that's because he is such a good player that you don't expect him to have a 6 out of 10. You always expect him to have an 8 or a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, look, we also got to be fair to Pieter-Steph. Remember, he was one of the players that that were injured, that were coming back from injury, that had to be cleared to be in the squad to go to New Zealand. So, like, sometimes I think, like you say, we expect so much from him. We just assume that he's gonna walk into the team first, and then secondly, he's gonna put up a 10 out of 10 because, well, that's what he does. With regards to Marco, I think the fact that he had to be off at one stage, I think the fact that he had to be off might suggest that he's probably not 100% from the fitness perspective. And if that's the case, then it makes the decision much easier. But you're right, though. I also thought he played incredibly well. And it'll be good to have a settled, and also with Sia, you have to again look. Remember, they weren't sure if they were going to play him, and he had that knee niggle. You then have to look at him again and kind of like try and work out whether he's he hasn't aggravated the knee injury that he had going into Eden Park. So if Sia's okay, it would be nice to have a settled loose trio, particularly with the issues that we're having at the at the breakdown. But I mean, just looking at the chats again, all in the game asked the question about João Augustus. What does he have to do to get a look in? Well, he had gone and beaten Leinster in Leinster to make it into the Champions Cup final. But that's where the issues began, because suddenly, you got injured, you couldn't play in the final. And then I think what's happened with João is it's a bureaucracy thing, because he was moving from Northampton to Ulster, and kind of like that needed to be completed first before the Boks could kind of like take receipt of him. I'm not sure what the sort of the actual red tape is, but like it feels like his participation in this rugby championship fell in between the cracks of the red tape. And I think come the end of your tour, I think he'll be roped in. But the problem is, I think what they really wanted as well was they would have liked to have him in June for the camps, just to get him up to speed with how they do things, and to see, because I'm 100% with all in the game in this. I like that guy. A lot of us like Jasper. João Augustus to me comes across as a Jasper Visa with much more. More pace off the mark, sort of a bit of hands, and it's one of those guys. I mean, his weakness in the past was maybe his conditioning. I don't know if that's still a thing, where he could give you a good 20-30 minutes, and then once he got tired, he'd start disappearing. You don't want that. Well, you don't play for the Boks like that. But anyway, I mean, they had called him up. And if they had called him up, then it's very simple. But we probably need to go back to your Victor call, because I see on the chat that it's a very popular, and frankly, I 100% agree with it.
Yeah, no, likewise. I think, and also tying into what Dave says here, I'm not saying just replace coaches, but just tap into the knowledge. And I think absolutely there is value there. There are some things that a player who's been there, who's been at the cauldron, will be able to express to a younger player that perhaps, a coach who hasn't played at the highest level might, will be able to share. So, yeah, I think it's important. And look, I do think that Rassie does utilize a lot of ex-players, but sort of sporadically. I know that the Springboks have always tended to every now and again call in, whether it's a Brendan Fenter and a Peter de Villiers, whether, there's always, Dwayne Vermeulen has made his way back into the Springbok fold. So I'm pretty sure it happens. You spoke about Juan Christus and, his value in the past having been the guy who could finish off or play a good, strong 20. But I thought when I watched Malcolm Marx yesterday, I wonder if we shouldn't have started with our best scrum, and try to just put the wind out of the All Blacks' sails, as it were, and then come on, with Malcolm Marx on the bench. But look, I understand, of course, that the selection would not have been an easy one for Rassie to make, because you want to lean on the experience that he does have at the moment in that squad. And yet, Hendrik Wessels, I thought, did very well. He looks like the real deal. I think I was worried just a week ago. I was talking about, oh my gosh, what's happening? Where are the hookers with Bongi no longer seemingly in the loop anymore? But seeing that Jan-Hendrik Wessels' performance really made me feel very, very good. I think Wilco Low, welcome, well done. You've submitted yourself. You definitely have it. I think Oxen J, best prop at the moment that we have, if much in the world.
That, I think the using the front row was a bit of a conundrum for the Bok coaches, simply because what happened there was, remember, they named their team after the All Blacks because they almost wanted to have a look to see what the All Blacks were going to try and do, so that they could make up their mind about which direction they wanted to take as a result. And if you look at the team, it was a team picked almost, partly due, with what the All Blacks were doing and trying to cover that. So it was pretty much the same with the front rowers, because the All Blacks had Tupaea as a replacement hooker, Tamaiti Williams, who is incredibly highly rated, probably their best loosehead prop, and they had Tyrell Lomax. Basically, it's almost like they had their best front row on the bench. So now, as Rassie is sitting there, and you're like, well, do I try to counter that, or do I, or do I just go with ours, with our best, and then and the rest? Because obviously we didn't have a bomb squad situation going.
Hey guys, if you like what you see and you want to support the show, we want you to be part of That Rugby Union Show family. Then just hit the like button, subscribe to the show, tell your friends, make sure you join us every time we're on. Slap that bell. There are new episodes every week. Don't miss it.
That's it. Yeah, actually the one thing, obviously I was talking about the front rowers, and I think it was all in the game. No, it was Campo who was talking about Wilco. He makes the very valid points of, yes, Wilco can destroy scrums, but is he of much use around the park? Because I think one of the things most people don't understand about the legend of Frans Malherbe is his mobility and his ability to keep working despite being 135 kilos or whatever he is. So he's a big man. He's got capacity and an engine to just keep going and going and going. And so it is a question that's going to come to a head sort of over the next 2 years. You can see with the Boks getting a guy in like Asenat and Tlabaganye, they are looking for almost like a like-for-like replacement. Again, a big guy who can do other things around the park, including obviously, the higher work rate. But by the same token, you then sit and you go, you've got Thomas Tutoe, who is a big, mobile guy, but from what I've seen, he's never going to destroy a scrum. So you then ask yourself, it's almost like it's almost like getting a goalkeeper and worrying about whether he's good with his feet or not. instead of, does he save the ball from getting into the net? Does he stop the ball from getting into the net? So if you start worrying more about whether your tight head is mobile than, whether he can scrum, I think you have a problem. So I think it's one of those things we're going to be very careful about sort of harping or sort of making more of a big deal about Wilco's sort of lack of mobility, and then sort of overlooking, the main thing that he actually does, which is destroying scrums. So I think it's a decision that the Bok coaches are going to have to make over the next 2 years, because I don't see a guy like Frans Malherbe, go to Australia in 2 years. So it's a decision that's definitely going to have to be made.
Awesome. Thanks for the comments, guys. Do keep them going. We're about to wrap up. Dave saying, loving the channel. We're loving you come on board and have the conversation. I mean, this is what it's all about. All of the games saying, have to give a shout out to Centurion Adi Savea, who's a special player, to state the obvious. And yes, it was that turnover right at the end with the Centurion winning it. He played incredibly well. We saw what a very effective number 8 of the back of the scrum can do in terms of the carry as well. But I thought he had a really good game, Sam.
Adi's one of those weird guys. When you look at his numbers, he's not a particularly big man. He's actually, it's one of the great ironies that he and Sia are big mates off the field as well, because they're quite similar guys. Sia's is about 185 and probably about 205 kilos. So he's not a big man either, but both guys just punch way above their weight. Anytime Adi Savea gets into contact, he makes such great post-contact meters because he's just got that leg drive. I mean, the Xhosa commentary, they call him Ifufunyane, which is basically a demon, because he's just unstoppable, because he looks like a guy who's basically possessed. He plays like a guy who's possessed. So I think, listen, you saw yesterday that he kept stride with Cheslin Colby in a chase for a kick ahead. He kept stride. He was with him the whole time. And then obviously he made that incredible sort of steal. I think it was off Marco Verstappen with the Boks sort of like knocking on the door to at least draw the game. So I'm telling you, that guy is incredible. Like, I think somebody put it right yesterday in one of the pundits when they said, Savea is like one of those guys you look at and you think, what? I'd love to have this guy in our team. And, if we had that guy playing for the Boks, we would have so few problems to deal with. But, he's a New Zealander, proud one. We can just admire from a distance, I guess.
Yeah, no, he is. Well, we're going to wrap it there, but a quick last comment. 28-24, Australia winning it at the death against Argentina. I thought it was a phenomenal decision to not go for the draw, but to go for the win. Joe Schmidt has definitely taught these guys something, and there's this self-belief that has crept into that Wallaby side, which you like to see, but as a result, it means this rugby championship is still wide open.
I hated that result, not because I hate the poor Aussies. I hated it because I wanted the away teams to win yesterday. The reason I wanted the away teams to win was to keep my ridiculous theme of every player, every team in this head-to-head must win one, lose one, win one, lose one, until we get into the final sort of 2 or even the final round with all 4 teams in contention. So that's what I want, because now it's that much harder when it's the visiting team that loses first. You want the home team to lose first, so that there's just desperation from the home team and the embarrassment or whatever you want to call it, and then they've got to win. So I'm a bit concerned. We're desperate to win next week, so are the Argentines. I don't know if both sides are going to be able to do it. But we'll see what happens. Oh, by the way, just to respond to David, touche about pointing out that Rassie and Nick with very brilliant players before they became coaches. So, hey, who's to say what about Vili? 100% agree with that.
Fair enough, fair enough. But they also had their own shortcomings, which they were able to identify even whilst they were playing. So Malic will tell you, he'll tell you straight up, he was not the biggest, the fastest, the strongest. Likewise, Rassie will tell you that he was swift for a number 7, but he wasn't the biggest. He wasn't the best carrier. So there's always a bit of a caveat with those guys. And it's that awareness, I think, that helps them.
Listen, as long as Vili doesn't end up coaching defense, we're all good, okay?
Or maybe he can tell you what not to do.
I just hope he doesn't see this, because if he does, you're right. It's all those, all those
again.
Conferences, nobody's greeting, everybody hates your guts because you said this about them. But yeah, as long as he doesn't
we like you quite.
Okay.
We will be fine. We'll be fine. Vili will be fine. And look, the great thing is any squad needs depth. So even if he doesn't necessarily play, but if he's available, because final thoughts, and before we, next week we'll talk about obviously what's coming up next in Wellington. But final thought is the results this year matter a little bit more than maybe people have thought about, because there's that World Cup draw that happens. So your position on the World Rugby rankings is going to matter. And look, it was one playing 2. There's no real reason we should drop away from that. But, 1 or 2 more slip-ups, and then that World Cup draw becomes a little bit more interesting than what Rassie and his Chargers would like.
Look, I won't lie. I'm not a big fan of the World Cup draw being so far away from the tournament itself. But obviously they've got other things to take care of, i.e. the rest of the qualifiers and all of that stuff. That's fair enough. I get it, but I'm not a big fan of sort of telegraphing it so far ahead of time. But look, if I've seen anything off the box, is that they probably prefer it when they get into something approaching a group of death, because it almost focuses the mind for them. So actually, I don't necessarily think it would be such a bad thing, because it just kind of puts the Boks in that place that they love to be at, which is the underdogs, where everyone thinks, oh no, the Boks are not worth it, it's not going to happen, and then they're playing out there to show everyone, to prove everyone wrong. If it does happen, that doesn't necessarily have to happen, but if it does happen, I'm not terribly mad at it either.
Right. Dave, we really need to go, but he says before you wrap up, I want to suggest a few names for the women's Bok team. We're not going to get into that whole debate, except to say seeing them win against Italy was absolutely phenomenal. They're up against France. I think kickoff is at 5:45 this afternoon. So yeah, make sure you watch them. They're already through to the quarters, but well done, Sways to Brain. It was one of our very first interviews. Was it not our first?
No, I wasn't along by then. Yeah.
Oh, jeepers. It was even pre-sub. I think it was the second one that we did. And speaking about principles and fundamentals of coaching and how excited he was, and, sort of stating his claim then already was wonderful to see. So well done to Sways and to the girls. We wish them absolutely. He was our second, Paul says. He was our second. So we obviously knew something special was going to happen with that team. We're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much, everyone, for the comments. Absolutely love it. Make sure you don't miss us. Look out for us on the socials for later this week. Springboks on to match 2 against the All Blacks. It's going to be a biggie. Thanks, Sim.
Welcome back to That Rugby Union Show. Well, what a week it's been.
He's playing like a man possessed.
And so much more. It's not this Rugby Union Show. It's That Rugby Union Show.